Welcome to a PRSA Philadelphia video podcast. This program was recorded May 22, 2008 at the Union League Club in Philadelphia. Chapter President Marisa Sharkey now introduces the program.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Marisa Sharkey. I am with St. Christopher's Hospital for Children, and I'm the president of your PRSA chapter. And I'm very pleased to welcome you to tonight's media panel, Media Chameleons, How the Visual News Media is Adapting in the Fast-Paced Video World. And before we begin our program, I just want to let you know of some upcoming programs that our chapter has planned over the next couple of months. On July 17th, we're having a luncheon about using social media and PR stunts to grow your business. And this is featuring nationally renowned speaker, adventurist, and entrepreneur Peter Shankman. So we're also really looking forward to that. And now, before we begin, I want to recognize one of our chapter board members who made tonight's program possible, and that is Cheryl Squadrito. She's president and executive director of Mediafriendly PR, and Cheryl's also a former journalist for the Philadelphia Inquirer and the Courier-Post, and she'll be serving as tonight's moderator. And now I will turn the mic over to her to introduce our program and panelists. Thank you.
Good job. Hi, everyone. And if I start talking too fast, because that sometimes happens when I get excited, just say slow down. Just a quick reminder for everyone to make sure your cell phones are on vibrate or just turn down the volume, because we are recording it tonight for a podcast. And as Marisa said, I'm Cheryl Squadrito, and I'm Executive Director of Mediafriendly PR. And on behalf of the board, I would like to welcome you tonight. I'm happy to be the moderator tonight for a number of reasons, because before I lost my company a few years ago, I was a working journalist. I worked for the Philadelphia Inquirer and Courier-Post. And one of my favorite parts of being a writer was working with the reporters and the photographers and developing a relationship with them. And I always thought the photographers were among the coolest in the newsroom because they had great war stories of the local politicians and newsmakers. Plus, jeans were okay for them because they never knew where their assignments were going to take them. They could lead them to maybe a black-tie charity or, something like a crime scene in a gritty neighborhood. And sometimes in my career, even some photographers got arrested. So to me, they were always kind of cool. They were charged, maybe not, never went to jail. Also, I knew as a journalist that if the visuals were good with my stories, I knew I would get better play and maybe even the front page. So, and I'm sure as PR professionals, you know that part of pitching a story is pitching the visuals as well, especially for TV. So tonight's panel is a little different than other panels I've attended because this is going to focus how the media's job has changed in this fast-paced world. How has it changed? When I started out in the Inquirer suburban office right out of college in the 90s, the photographers took photographs in black and white film, and they developed the images in a darkroom. And then every afternoon, a courier would come to our office in Delaware County and get the pictures that they had printed and cropped to fit, and then they would take them for the next day's paper. I remember in the 90s working with John Costello, covering Miss America one year, and he was so nervous because it was the first time they were on deadline using a digital camera, and he had to shoot the picture and send it in that night. So I remember that night. And now, as Sarah's going to tell us tonight, video footage is a part of virtually every story, and web content is now virtually instant. And Shawn will talk about that hopefully too. Times have changed too for news reporting. During World War I and World War II, war correspondents carried typewriters and really prided themselves about objectivity. Now blogs like Alive and Baghdad are providing coverage that you can't find in the mainstream. And tonight we'll have Brian talk about that. So we have a lot of ground to cover tonight, and I would like to introduce our guests, who are some of the coolest in the visual field right now in our region. Shawn Sullivan works as a visual artist for the Courier-Post. He started out as a photography intern 11 years ago, and now he is working as one of the web producers for the Courier-Post website, which is courierpostonline.com. And one thing I remember about Shawn when I worked at the Courier-Post was he was one of the first journalists to really push that we have unique website coverage on their website. So Shawn was very cutting edge, at least in our region, in that, he pushed it for the Courier-Post is in South Jersey, for those of you who may not know where it is. Shawn resides in Collingswood with his young wife and 2 children. And we're also very happy tonight that we have Brian Conley, who runs Small World News TV and founded the website Alive in Baghdad, and he founded that in 2005. His blog gives a perspective of the Iraqi war from the Iraqi civilians' point of view. And the website is funded by online donations. And I'm going to let, is that true? Did I get that right? Yeah, good. Okay, primarily. I'll let him explain that. Brian grew up in Florida, attending college and grad school in Massachusetts, and is a documentarian. He's been living in Philadelphia for about a year, and he'll be getting married next month, so best wishes from us. Congrats. And I have more. Jim Eyles is from NFL Films. He's the art director. He graduated from Haddonfield High School in 1987 and the University of the Arts in 1991. He has a double major with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Animation and Illustration. Jim started with NFL Films in 1991 in the film processing lab, which he describes as a foot-in-the-door job. He worked his way up and learned graphics. He had to learn the graphics on his own for about 6 months. Because of the advancing and ever-changing world of technology, Jim had to relearn his job about 5 times in the past 15 years. In 2006, Jim was promoted to art director and now oversees a department of 6 artists, including 3D animators, After Effects artists, and print designers. And under Jim's direction, he has won a number of awards, including 2 gold and 1 silver Broadcast Designer Association awards and 2 Addies. Also, Jim is a really great guitarist, and he resides in Haddonfield with his wife and 2 young sons. And I'm very happy tonight to have Sara Glover, a staff photographer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, with us tonight. And she's been with the Philadelphia Inquirer since 1999. She's a graduate of Syracuse University with a dual bachelor's degree in photojournalism and African American studies. She completed her master's degree in communication studies at Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania. Sara has won many photography awards and recently got back from covering Barack Obama's campaign. At the Inquirer, Sara covers a range of stories such as the impact of drunk driving, school life at a local high school, a girl aging out of foster care in New Jersey. Also, she's learned to shoot and edit her own video as part of her job. Sara has served 3 terms as the national board member for the National Association of Black Journalists. She's an advocate for diversity in the newsroom, media content, and coverage. Her work has been exhibited in the African American Museum in Philadelphia, the Hopkins House Gallery, the Peter Mott House, and the Perkins Center of the Art. She's also an adjunct faculty member in Burlington County College, and she resides in South Jersey with her remarkable son, Skylar. Sorry about that. I thought that we'll be covering a variety of topics tonight. So I'm hoping that you'll save your questions till the end, and we do have a microphone here, so we'll get to that. Sara, if it's okay, I wanted to start with you tonight about, I saw Monica Yanchini, the Inquirer columnist, and she said that she had photographed a skateboarding story with you a few months ago, and she was really impressed at the videotaping that you did too, the video journalism. And I was hoping that maybe you can explain to us about the Inquirer's transition from still photography to videotaping. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure.
Can you hear? They'll let you know if they can't hear us.
Sure. How's this? Okay. Thank you for having me this evening, first of all. And second of all, as it relates to the Inquirer's leap into video journalism, visual journalism at large, over the past year in particular, we have conducted more video projects. And we hope that video journalism will be an infusion of visual journalism. And so it's not really a separate entity. We kind of see it as just part of the big ball of what we do as visual journalists. And actually, of late, I've kind of been referring to myself as a visual journalist instead of a photojournalist, although whatever you call me, I usually answer to, so it really doesn't matter. But with that being said, over the last year in particular, we made the leap in terms of the purchasing of major video equipment. And on our photography staff, there are about 5 or 6 of us over the past year that have, I guess the way to put it, has demonstrated the higher level of interest. Not that all the photographers aren't interested, but there were about 5 of us that got cameras and started working diligently to immerse ourselves in video journalism. And it's not to say that we hadn't been doing video journalism over the last 3 to 4 to 5 years. It's just that the concentration of it as being a daily workflow really became concentrated over the past year to 18 months. So the first step is purchasing the equipment and also acknowledging that we are all unique individuals just as learners. So to take everything that you know about what you know thus far in terms of your expertise and kind of throwing that out the window and looking at videography really as an entirely different beast. And so the learning curve for each of us was different. I'm a very hands-on learner. So you could hand me a manual and say, Sarah, read this in a week, and then let's do some video. And I'll come back a week later and I won't be ready to do the video. So I need to learn as a hands-on learner, and other people learned by reading a manual and they picked it up right away. So, I was one of the ones that was self-taught, and just by doing did I learn. So I would find an assignment that to me spoke or lended itself to video as being a component of the story, and then going out and shooting it and saying, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that with the story, or the sound here is phenomenal, or it's not that interesting there, and then asking questions and figuring out a way to incorporate what I saw as the heart of the story and transferring that into a video project. So I think at the Inquirer, as is most places, really the sky's the limit for the range of creativity, and it's certainly embraced in our newsroom, and we're certainly encouraged to do more video. But I think one of the things that I like to point out is not everything deserves a video package. And so that's one of the things over the last year in particular, as we've really concentrated our effort, is to what stories really elevate themselves to a video component. While video is an important part of our website, every single story that we go out and cover doesn't necessarily deserve to have a video component. So it's really just, again, an extension of being a visual journalist and identifying the key things in a story that would lend itself to video journalism.
Do you find people pitching you stories that are specifically video driven? Do you find people calling you and saying, consider this?
Ironically not, and that's okay, because we're professionals just as public relations professionals are professionals, and just as the subjects are, subjects, and so I think that sometimes it would be helpful to have that component maybe addressed in advance, but as the journalist who's getting information, whether it be a festival or whether it be a human interest story, we're going to ask the questions of you that would be able to gear us into where the story falls in terms of our multimedia. And when we're talking about visual journalism and video journalism right now, but for us, we also, in terms of multimedia, we're doing so many aspects of multimedia, so there may be something else within that process of communication that we find lends itself to another form of multimedia. And slideshows in and of themselves of still photographs are very popular online. So just because the story doesn't have a video element doesn't mean that it's lower on the Richter scale. It's just really about how we package the story and how can we tell the story most effectively to the audience.
Great, thank you. I'm curious from Shawn to hear, you were among the first to start out. It would be interesting to hear a story about maybe how you started out, like one of the earlier ones, and what it's evolved into now, because I know you're doing multiple things there at the Courier.
Yeah, we, I think we started doing video like a little over 5 years ago. It was hard for us because I had a boss at the time that told us he wanted to start shooting videos, but none of us knew how to do it. We didn't have official training. Gannett's now doing official training throughout all their chain of newspapers. But my boss at the time just wanted cool things, and would send me out to go shoot video, and I didn't know how to shoot video, so I had to start watching television shows and documentaries to try to figure out how you do it. We didn't have good equipment. We had a $200 digital recorder, not even a digital recorder, it was a Super 8, a high 8 tape. It was just something you'd buy in Walmart. And, we tried to tell stories with it as best I could, not knowing exactly how to do it. And we had people coming at us all the time, like, "Ooh, video, let's do video." And they would ask us to go to an art exhibit and shoot video. And we'd say, "Is there anything moving? And they'd say, no, there's artwork. No, that might not be good for video. And it was very difficult for us to get everybody thinking the way of video. And at the time, the video players weren't, the video had to be very tiny and small, and you couldn't really get the feel for the story. Now, flashing forward, we had the broadcast division of our company does a week training with all teams of writers, photographers, and maybe an editor for them to see how involved shooting video is. It's not the same as shooting it's not the same as shooting. When I was a photographer, it was easy to go in, get my pictures, and go, spend time with the subject. But video is a lot hard. It takes a little longer. You have to interview. You have to, try to talk to the person first, and follow them around to make the video interesting.
And what are you doing now with the video? Has it changed? I mean, the pictures are bigger now.
Yeah, the player's bigger. Along with that comes some technological issues, because the player gets bigger, and then all of a sudden we have to wait for everybody to have a high enough speed internet for them to look really good. I think the hardest part is the turnover at newspapers of writers moving on and new writers coming in, new editors coming in. It's hard for them each time. Sometimes we get a person who is not has never really thought about video, so you have to kind of keep getting the person on board with wanting to do it. At first, I think all print journalists, some of our writers were like, video? I just write. I don't pick up a camera. And we have Matt Katz, who's now going over to the Inquirer. He was like, oh, I love video, and he just started, telling his own stories on his own. They had envisioned us going on with a writer and a photographer as a team. Sometimes it's difficult to do that at our paper. So.
Very cool. Thank you. I was kind of curious about NFL films, so I'm going to move it over to you, Jim, because what they do, they document sports events, and without going into the history of it, well, NFL Films is right here in our backyard in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, and I always was fascinated that you filmed football games like they were movies, like they were just magnificent to look at, and they use film. And I guess is there pressure now? Well, first off, you did say tonight that they still film on film, which is different.
Yeah. 16 mil.
Okay.
One of the last people to shoot 16 millimeter film.
So I guess maybe can you talk a little bit about how NFL Films has adapted to the technology, and maybe haven't succumbed to the pressure to not film on video on film?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not that we haven't embraced technology, because we certainly have in various levels of how we do our business, but it was a creative decision, really. And Steve Sable, who is our president and kind of our guiding creative force, made he has a pat speech that he pulls out for occasions like this, where he says, film video was like Formica. It's like this table. It's cold. It's got it's distant, and film is like the wood under that table. It's warm, and it has grain, and it has feeling and texture and substance, and that's what I want. That's what I want to see on the screen. And he does have a point. And the way technology has progressed now, there are a lot of cameras now that will simulate. NFL Films was one of the first companies to shoot. We were the first company to shoot slow motion sports video, which you just take for granted now. But in the old days, you had live video television cameras that weren't able to do that. They would have to shoot their image, run it back onto videotape, and then you literally had a guy in the control booth rolling the tape by hand to simulate slow motion.
Wow.
Well, now as technology has advanced, there's a camera now called a phantom camera, which shoots at 2,000 frames per second.
Wow.
And it looks like, those shots of the bullet going through the watermelon or across the, absolutely, and it's shot on video. So, that camera specifically comes with a tech who makes $500 a day, or some ridiculous amount of money, and it's there. It's just very expensive. So I think it is catching up, but he's still he's sticking to his guns, and we are probably the biggest purchaser of 16 millimeter. We were second to the U.S. Army. in purchasing. So Kodak still sends us a very lovely Christmas card and takes us on golf tournaments, and please don't go anywhere, don't change your mind, Steve Saber.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You said you started to talk about that you do have cutting edge technology. Can you talk a little bit about, because I know you're in charge of the animation there for NFL Films. Mm-hmm. We haven't really talked about animation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as the workflow that we have is once that film is brought in and processed, we have a lab inside the building where we process all our own film. And then it's brought into machines called telecine, which convert it to digital tape, HD tape or standard definition, which we're now trying to switch all over to HD. But from that point on, that film never sees the light of day again. The film rolls all go back into air-controlled vaults, and it's there if you ever need it. But everything from that point on is all digital media. We have a thing called a Unity, which once that film is processed and brought in, everything gets loaded into this gigantic server. Because say that we're working on 5 different Super Bowl shows at one time, all these different people want to access. Well, if we only had one tape, it would be a lot of guys, wrestling over these tapes. So everything gets put into this giant database called Unity, and all the different edit rooms and creative rooms can access that stuff at full resolution and put it into their shows. So, while it seems kind of low tech and 16 millimeter, and you're looking for the splice, the tape splices, it's once it's into the building, it's handled in a very 21st century kind of way.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm kind of curious too to hear from Brian about completely the opposite kind. Like you're doing, I'm guessing, I know you're a documentarian, but yours is a video blog, and I'm going to let you talk about it because what he does is really cool with Alive in Baghdad.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't really call it a video blog. I think I personally, as a filmmaker and a documentarian and someone who comes from sort of a similar kind of like craft-focused background of 16 millimeter, I can understand that. I mean, I would never shoot 16 because I don't know how I'd ever be able to afford to shoot 16 millimeter. But it would be awesome. I mean, if I had my druthers, sure, I'd shoot on 16. But I think it's sort of frustrating how people are like, oh, well, what you're doing now is a video blog, and it's cute, and it's nice that you're doing that, and CNN does CNN, and then you are in Iraq producing a video blog by Iraqis who you just gave cameras to, and it's the number of times we've had to say to people, everyone that we employ is a professional journalist, has worked as a journalist in the Iraqi media, and then when I say, and I show them our coverage, and then I say, and how much do you think we spend a month? And it's, we're spending a few grand. I mean, we're literally able to fundraise almost entirely on donations and support from viewership. Now that doesn't pay me. I'm lucky. My fiance is a doctor. I mean, I've been paid to some degree, but not great. I mean, she's not like a fancy doctor. She works at one of these low-income clinics, but
it's okay to be a fancy doctor.
Well, it would be great, but so I think it's just it goes to show that to some degree there is still a worth to going and doing something, and there is a desire to see it. And our fundraising, as you said, it's primarily online donations, but it's also another documentary filmmaker will be doing a project, and he won't have anybody in Iraq, or he won't want to spend $10,000 to send him to Iraq. So we'll say, okay, spend $5,000, and you can hire our people who already know what their work looks like. They're capable, they can do it, and so we've just about fundraised or raised enough, have enough projects fundraised. I don't know if fundraise is right because we are a for-profit corporation right now. We just haven't got almost enough money. I mean, it's May, and we're about to have enough money to pay our Iraqi staff through the entire year. So we're doing not so bad, but then again, our overhead's pretty low.
Can you tell me a little bit about how it works? Because you're here in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Your staff is there in Iraq. Can you talk a little bit about, and then the video footage goes up every Monday. You said the footage goes up. If you can give us a quick thumbnail of how it works.
So we have an import account with DHL, which means that our tapes are all sort of prioritized, and it takes about 56 hours to get a tape from Iraq to the United States. So a couple times a month we have packages sent. The tapes get digitized here. They're put online. We have a translator in Syria who's an Iraqi refugee there, and she downloads the videos, translates them, emails us a document file with the translation. We edit them. We, being my partner Steve, who's from Philadelphia, and I, we edit the show here, and every Monday we produce a new sort of short documentary / news program about life in Iraq. All the content is produced by Iraqis. It's our bureau coordinators, an Iraqi, a Palestinian who grew up in Iraq. All of our correspondents are Iraqis. We have them in Baghdad primarily, also in the north. We're working on getting some people in the south. And, you know, our biggest limitations are we don't have the finances to produce a show 5 days a week. We have the material, we have the staff, we have, you know, we could be producing all over Iraq, but we don't have the couple extra $1,000 a month to sort of have an editor full-time to be able to work on that, or two editors. But it's interesting, you know, how we look at how things are prioritized in terms of finances, you know. Everybody says, oh, journalism is so, it doesn't make a profit, and it's so expensive, and all these things. Well, you know, in 1870, the first news of the French defeat in some war that I don't remember, or some battle, was received by a $5,000 telegram. You know, during 1870, somebody spent $5,000 on one story. Not the staffer's cost, but the cost to send the story to the news bureau from the field, right? Mm-hmm. And things were costing 100 years ago, it was $5 a word to send a telegraph. So you're talking, plus you're paying the staff, plus you're paying his fare to get there, plus his, you know, dues with the military for all the gear he's renting from the military. And it's a very different picture, but nobody looks at it that way, and nobody thinks about it that way. And that's the thing I'm most afraid of is, you know, at what point is it no longer going to be possible because there really isn't a value, you know.
But what you do is different than what CNN is doing in the sense that it's
sure.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, we talk to people on the street. We employ locals so that we're able to get to on-the-ground stories. Everything is done by locals and produced by locals, and it's produced, you know, in Arabic with English subtitles. And I think all these things, and the fact that we don't have any perceived, accurately or inaccurately, tied to the U.S. military or to supporting the war, any of these sort of things. So we don't have the same dangers, we don't have the same risk, we don't have the same stigma that a lot of other media agencies have now, unfortunately. But at the same time, I don't think CNN is going to go away. You know, I think that hopefully, you know, maybe one day Small World News will be the go-to company for CNN or for somebody else who wants to do stuff in the field. I mean, our hope is to keep opening these projects all over the world. Kind of depends on the money. But I think, you know, things like interviewing the president, interviewing parliamentarians, doing, you know, stories about the military, things like that, that's going to always be done by a bigger agency. But there has to be a question of the value. And, you know, at the same time, if a consumer says, you know, if they demand it, you know, right now a big media can kind of say, oh, well, it's too dangerous, or nobody really wants that content, or we don't have the right, you know, it's not safe, we don't have the right context, that sort of thing. My hope is that as Alive in Baghdad, you know, as a program is seen more and more, the consumer will be able to say, well, they're doing it and they have no budget and they like work out of a row house in South Philly and now an apartment in West Philly. So, you know, obviously you could be doing it.
Right.
But I think that's, to some degree, that's also a question on consumers, that we have to demand better news. And we have to participate in creating, and that's part of why I started Alive in Baghdad.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. One question, I want to go back to Sara, if that's all right. I wanted to ask a little bit about Philly.com, which I know is a separate entity from the Philadelphia Inquirer and Daily News. And I think of the online media in Philadelphia right now, it's the biggest. No offense, Shawn. But you know, maybe you could talk a little bit about what's their role in local media coverage, because some of it is blended. You get Daily News stuff on there, you get Inquirer stuff, and then unique stuff. I know a lot of really great reporters are there now. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, the Philly.com's role in the local media coverage.
Sure. From my perspective as a staffer at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and again, this is my perspective, I view Philly.com as more of a producing entity versus the content provider entity, in the sense of generating the actual content itself. They manage a lot of the content that's provided from the Inquirer staff, and the daily news staff. That's not to say the Philly.com doesn't go out and shoot their own video and or report on their own stories, but the majority of the content is provided from the Philadelphia Inquirer staff and the daily news staff. For example, in the Philadelphia Inquirer newsroom, we have an online desk, and they work in concert with Philly.com. So sometimes it often feels that, we're kind of the same entity. They just recently moved out of our building, but, it's not uncommon to see a producer from Philly.com walking through our newsroom to talk with the online editor or to talk with me as a photographer who shot video, that kind of thing. So I think from the public's perspective, it probably feels as though it's the same entity, although we are different entities. I can't put my finger on where each of those entities are going, because I think just like media is evolving and changing, our newsrooms are physically in terms of the level of staffing, and then what our focuses are in terms of where we're going with our multimedia. For example, Bob Moran, who's a city reporter, has a, I guess it would be considered a video blog or a vlog called Picture Show. And one of the photographers at the Daily News, I believe it's Jim McMillan, has a video blog, which is Street Life. So it's a combination of hosting that content, promoting that content, and what they literally do at Philly.com every day is they look at the assemblages of stories that both entities have, and they look at the news, and then they look at where are their viewers, where the hits are, and oftentimes it's sports and it's hard news. And of course, people are interested in features. And so the Philly.com homepage then becomes an assemblage of all of these stories and all this content. And then when you click on the Inquirer or the Daily News, the page almost looks like the Inquirer newspaper, and then the Daily News almost looks like the Daily News newspaper. So in some ways, there are three varying identities, but yet the content that you may see on the Inquirer's homepage, the same stories may appear on the Philly.com homepage. So it's a roundabout way of saying that I don't know if there's a defining definition of what it is. It's like it's content on a website that hopefully encourages readers and viewers of the content. And I think one of the main things to point out is how that content is displayed, because if it's on the main page of either the Inquirer homepage or the Philly.com homepage, and it's in a nice position, I think it'll get more clicks just by the nature of where it is on the page. And so sometimes, the content in itself, if people are interested in the Eagles or the Phillies, they'll search for that wherever it is on the page. But oftentimes, and this is me because I don't look at the clicks or the numbers, but this is just from what I get from the viewers, it's kind of how easy is it to find the information. So I think, but with that being said, I did want to mention with my Obama coverage in particular, I followed him for the PA bus tour, and then I also followed him the week prior to the primary, followed him, meaning I was a part of the traveling press corps, and I shot video and stills, and I was the only traveling journalist who did that, and I don't recommend it because it was like working 20 hours a day, no lie. I would get up at 7 and start with his detail and work until 11 at night, and then I edited from like midnight to 3 in the morning and then got up again. Oh, but after the second day of doing it, like the first 2 days, it was all adrenaline. But by the third day, I was getting so much email because people were like loving the videos, because it was like a video with stills and video. And so I felt like, I can't let my viewers down. Even if it was only 5 viewers, they're like emailing me, so I have to keep going. And so like the last day when he came to Philly, it ended like Thursday night, but then that evening through the night, I felt like I just wanted to do my last video because it was going to summarize the whole week. And then I did the same thing with the week preceding up to the actual primary up through April 22nd. So it's just like, it was just a phenomenal way to utilize technology and the news and current events, and then also just something that was really phenomenal for us as a region in the state of Pennsylvania to have such an important thing happen for us, that the Pennsylvania primary was such a national significance. So that was like really a terrific opportunity, and I just wanted to like piggyback on one of these other guys are talking about, because it's like I'm just like excited to be hearing about the different things you are doing. And Sean, I have worked with him in the field, or we were covering the same events and seeing him in the field, but just that how much fun I'm having and how much I just love doing what I do. And like the video is for me has just been an extension of just the gratitude that I have and the graciousness I have for my subjects, or just for being a photographer and working for the paper. So for me, it's been a really positive change into another realm of an extension of my work. Whereas I know, as Shawn was describing a little bit, how different people and different professionals have different feelings about this new media and this change that we're all going through. Because I don't think that we know what it looks like in the sense of 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, because technology is just changing so fast. And as Brian was talking about the content and the viewership, that too drives our future in our technology, because what people want to a degree is what they'll get, and what will tailor our content and our coverage to appease the number of clicks that we get on our stories. So I say that to say that I'm really excited about being a videographer now.
Very cutting edge.
Documentarian in my own right, and I'm so glad that I'm cool. I just wanted to say that too. Thank you for that compliment.
I think the photographers were always the coolest. I would always disappear into the photo department because they always had the cool stuff. I guess one of my questions was, do you, and Shawn or Sara, you can answer this, do you find people act differently? Or maybe the four of you can answer this. Do people act differently?
Yeah.
Like, it's still when you're almost posed, but when you're when it's video, I mean, do they act differently?
Oh, yes.
More self-conscious, more, I mean, I don't care who answers. I'd just be interested to hear.
Absolutely differently. And I think people tend to, within a smaller period of time, let their guard down with the video, because they may not, it's just like a conscious thing. You may not realize the tape is still rolling type of thing. So depending on the situation that you're in, it's a little easier to get there with the subject, in the sense that, the camera's set up and the tape is rolling, and like my camera doesn't have any kind of indication that it's actually recording. But out of my own credibility, I will tell someone, I'm taping you, so it's not like there's any kind of, I'm not manipulating the subject, but at the same time, there's the sense of like being just human and just being who you are. Whereas with the still camera, people are very consciously aware when they're getting the picture taken, because of the camera goes up and then it comes down. And you hope that if you have some skill level, that you get to that point where the subject's so comfortable with you that they don't realize that the camera's going up and down, because those are the most important moments that you're capturing. But I think people are just, surprisingly, I found that people they gravitate to my video camera when I'm shooting video versus the still camera, because it's like a conversation piece. Oh, what's that? Oh, what kind of camera is that? Or, so it starts a conversation, and it often gives me just another door to enter into the community. So I think it's really great.
What about you, Shawn? Do you think people treat you differently or act differently when you have the video camera out?
I don't go out as much anymore as I used to, but I stick inside. But I tend to, when I was a photographer, I would shoot. I can't remember Sarah's shooting style, but photographers all have different ways. And I sit back a little farther with a longer lens, and I try to be as not in the moment as possible. Other shooters that I work with, get in there with that wide angle lens and get really involved. I tend to start out farther away. When I first started shooting video, I didn't have wireless mics. We couldn't afford wireless mics. I don't know if they existed at the time. I didn't know what they were. And I had to get in like everybody's face, and it became intrusive all the time. Now when we shoot, we have wireless mics, and when I first meet the person, I'll tell them, we do what's called dressing the mic, and you fish it up their shirt and you put it on them and tell them, I'm going to leave this on, but I'm not always going to be recording, but remember you have the mic on when you're talking. And I let them.
Or when you go to the bathroom.
Yeah. If this person tells me they're going to go to the bathroom, I turn my receiver off and let them know I'm turning it off. I try to be as open with them as possible, because it is something that they could walk to the other side of this building and I can hear them the entire time. So you got to keep that relationship and tell them that I will not be recording it, so you can talk about what you want. I will also turn it off when you're not in a room with me. But that wireless mic allows me to let them be as comfortable as possible with their. We did a lot of I used to shoot a lot of high school sports. So when I covered, not war stuff, but high school sports, a very intense moment. The coaches want to be able to talk to their athletes as they talk. Parents might not realize how they talk to their athletes, and and when you're there, they don't get to interact with their athletes as they normally would. With the wireless mic and me sitting back, I can get moments that with them and their players that I could never get when I first started out shooting. And something I couldn't get with the camera. I could get that emotion, but shooting a still picture is a very subjective thing. I can control whether a person looks happy, sad, or indifferent the entire time I'm there. If a person's just lost their entire family in an accident, and I'm sitting in a room with the father or the mother of this family who's totally died, if they're smiling because they're happy thinking about their family, I can choose to wait until they look sad and take a picture of that. Might not be reflective of the time I was there, and I have to always be conscious of what was the tempo of the room, what was the person feeling, and try to give all of those moments. The video camera lets me be more comfortable that I'm being as honest as possible, because you can tell in the person. Now editing, that's something that I think you can take a person out of context. I shoot linearly, so the event happens and I edit in the way it happens, so that I never have a moment come after a moment. Try to not do that. A moment that happens after another moment before it actually happened from another moment.
Time warp.
Yes. I try not to do that because I feel that takes it out of context. And still images, I could accidentally take it out of context, not realizing if the person was happy or sad. But with the video camera, I can they're being honest because you can hear them and you know if they're happy, if they're sad. And, that's the difference.
So they do act differently when you have the video camera.
They do.
Or they act more like
used
themselves.
to looking at the camera and going, "Hey, Grandma, how are you doing?" So when I walk in the room, I think people tend to look directly into the camera, the video camera, more for some reason. When if I'm shooting, the camera's here and I'm talking, and I'm sitting over here, and I want them to talk to me, kind of looking off the camera a little bit. But for some reason, they always go and look right at the camera. Yeah, and I don't know if that's because of all those birthday parties and all those graduations, and they're told that everybody waves at the wedding.
Very cool. Well, I want to make sure we have some time for questions from the audience, but I have a couple more things I wanted to just bring up. I'm kind of curious with Jim especially, what do you see as the immediate and long-term, maybe not plans or vision for the visuals at NFL Films? I mean, do you think you're going to succumb? I mean, I'm just kind of curious to see where you see this sports documenting of history, almost documentation of history. Where do you see it going?
Well, I think as long as Steve Sable is running our company, I think we'll be shooting film, or that we can find something that exactly matches what we want to put on the screen. Like I was saying before, that technology is catching up with the advent of 24p, which is a high definition tape stock or way of shooting that mimics film. 24p means it runs at 24 frames a second, the same way that film does. 24 frames a second, the way that film does. And it was people looking to simulate the look of film. And there's a company called Film Look, which says that it can take your video footage and make it look like 35 millimeter film, So I think we're not there yet. I think maybe in the next 10 years, if there is something, because it is a cumbersome media, film. There's lots of things to worry about. When we go to a game, we have the cameramen, but we also have film loaders, who are guys who sit in the dugout of the stadium and with this black bag, and they. I camera assisted for a while, and you have the cameraman, and then you have a runner who does nothing but run. He follows the cameraman around, and when he has shot his magazine of film, you run like hell back to the loader, and he takes that and he gives you another one, and then you have to go find your cameraman, which isn't always easy because they tend to run around a lot. And so it's kind of a cumbersome way to shoot an event. Whereas if you had let's say 10 years down the road, there is a simulated video Aeroflex camera that looks like an Aeroflex, looks like what we use. Why not use it? That would just be being stubborn for stubborn's sake, or using the notion of film. Whereas if the proof is in the pudding, if it looks right on screen, then why not? Do
you think viewers today are sophisticated enough to see the difference?
Yeah, graphics and video is one of the things that from 10 years old up, that people are just exposed to it so much now that the expectations are so high. The graphics, kids 15-year-olds can do what I do in their bedrooms and do it very, very well. I mean, it's startling. Some of the things that you'll see on YouTube of kids that have, the little fat kid with the broomstick doing the Star Wars stuff. I don't know if you've seen this. So like the YouTube thing, this kid was playing with it. It's a long story, but I mean, people will download this video and they have, the software that we use, After Effects, is, you can buy it for under $1,000 at any store. And, the back in the old days, my old one was $400,000.
Wow. So
the software and the access to Photoshop and the familiarity, I think everybody's expectations are higher. That they expect not just to see images, but to see them presented well. It keeps pushing us to do better work.
So we won't see NFL tapes anytime soon. It's going to always be NFL films for at least a little bit longer.
We do shoot some things on video.
Okay.
I won't tell you what.
I don't want to know. I don't want, in case Steve is listening, Sable. And Brian, where do you see? I guess one thing I want to ask you are some of the challenges for the future of Alive in Baghdad and what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of our original challenges is a lot of people would say, "Oh, you're biased, or aren't you against the war, or how you're not really doing real journalism because you have Iraqi staff, and we know how our Iraqi staff are, and they're just a little bit too biased." And I think that now that we've done it for 2 years, almost, we've been doing a show every week almost for 2 years. You can look and you can see there's however many shows that is, 75, 100 that we have. And you start to say, okay, well, you can't make this much stuff up with this much of a wide array of things, Mm-hmm. And we have people who are, and now we get criticism from both sides. I mean, I actually gave a talk. I was in Europe for a conference, and I went to another sort of smaller talk. And people actually asked me, basically accused me of being funded by the Pentagon and the CIA, because the videos I showed happened to be a little bit supportive of how the situation is going. And our stuff runs the gamut. People are, and what we really try to do is always to talk to people and let their opinion drive the story, sort of their viewpoint. And we push our guys and we say, look, if somebody's clearly being inaccurate or misleading or whatever, you need to get another perspective. Or if we just if we only could get sort of this side of things, we would say this is the only side that we could find. So maybe there isn't another side. Maybe there is, or maybe there isn't. Or maybe in this case, actually the other side would be inaccurate because it would only be one or two people.
But your pieces aren't like the sound bites that you see on the evening news. Your pieces are longer.
They're like 3 to 8 minutes.
Right.
I mean, they tend to be 5 to 8. In fact, the Iraqis that we've worked with and that we know and whatever often complain, and they say, really it needs to be 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. I mean, you can't, it's too complicated. Nobody's going to understand the story. And, it's true. I mean, sometimes we've taken a story that we thought should be 15 minutes and we make it into 2 stories. And other times it just doesn't seem like there's enough content, I mean, we interviewed a guy who was a leader of one of the sort of citizen militia groups that the U.S. has been supporting. It was like a 20 or 30-minute interview with him, and like everything he says is great. But I can't, I'm going to put just that guy for 20 minutes. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to watch it. And that, in fact, becomes a limitation. So we use this thing called RSS, which I don't need to get into specifics. But basically, it's like on demand for Comcast. Like you set up a program to watch videos and pull all your RSS feeds, whether it's a blog, articles, or a video blog. And you just get everything. It's like if you have iTunes, you open your iTunes, if there's a new Alive in Baghdad show, it automatically downloads, and then you can watch it whenever you want. And that allows us to build an audience in a way that we never could before. I mean, I've been putting video on the internet for 8 or 9 years. Back in 2000, we just called it video on the internet. We didn't call it a video blog or anything special. But now, because we have RSS, and people can just sort of say, okay, I want to watch these shows, and they can just come to it when they get to it. And that's why, audio podcasting blew up. I think video podcasting or video blogging, whatever you want to call it, it's not really going to blow up until people can easily get it on their television or on their computer, and everyone can get it, and broadband is there. And then the question, which is really the biggest challenge, are we still going to have the access that we have now? Are we going to have the sort of ability that anybody can post something on the internet and then anybody can have their own TV show? Or is it going to be sort of prioritized? Like, oh, well, you can look at YouTube, and YouTube controls how the video looks once it gets up because they want to keep their file size down, so it looks kind of crappy. But, when you watch MTV on YouTube, it always looks good, because they're not using the same things. Or, okay, you can get this video on your computer, but on your TV, you're only going to get videos that are created and backed by CNN, NBC, ESPN, and the Environment Channel or something. So I think that's really the big question is, are we still going to have the same access that we have today? And then, financially, is an audience going to generate that says, okay, I'm going to cut down one latte or one beer or one movie this month because I want to see news from people in Chengdu province right now who are Chinese and whose families are suffering, or people who are in Indonesia and Sudan, people who are in Mexico right now who actually know people that are trying to get into the United States or to other places.
Are they the kind of stories you're doing too?
That's what we do is we sort of try to say what is daily life like, and we follow the U.S. media and the international media a little bit and like sort of chase after similar stories when we see everybody else covering it, or we chase after stories that are huge that they're not covering. When the U.S. built a wall, basically the exact same kind of wall as the Berlin Wall, all around Adamia neighborhood in Baghdad. It was huge news for like 3 days, but the only video you could see, the only real images you could see, if you hunted, you might be able to find them on AP Wire or Getty or Reuters, or you saw the one image of a little kid like crawling through a big crack in the wall on The Daily Show. They ran like over and over again. But yet we have a long and in-depth piece that looks at demonstrations against the wall, interviews local officials, interviews people in the market, and also interviews people who are benefiting from the wall because now there's cab drivers and they know you can only go to this point, and then there's guys there who help carry stuff for old ladies who like can't get their stuff all the way home, and there's other guys who are selling like drinks and snacks for the taxi drivers, and so we're looking at all these different elements. And I think it's that's what people used to do, and I think we still can do it, but we need to make the effort, and we need to say, people do want to see it, they are interested, they don't want to just hear from Peter Jennings or Tom Brokaw or Brian Williams or see someone who looks like them,
Gotcha. Well, the last question I wanted to ask you before we open up to questions is, and where it applies, since we're all PR professionals here, or most of us are, if there's a way to pitch you a story, what's the best way to do it and how do you prefer it? I don't know, Jim, it doesn't really apply to you for pitching stories. Sara, it definitely does for you, because I know some people here may be curious about that. The best way to reach you?
Yeah, usually email's the best way to reach me. I mean, I also do pick up my voicemail, but not every day, sometimes not, but once or twice a month, depending on where I am in the universe. But I would say one of the things that I try to do is direct someone who's contacted me to the right editor or reporter or reporters, plural, because oftentimes the stories that you pitch have or could have a home in various sections of the paper and or online. So, I tend to do that because for my purposes or for what I do at the paper as a general assignment photographer, I fill in as an assignment editor on occasion, but outside of that role, when I fill in, I really can't usher things through for you. I more or less get the majority of my work down the assignment pipeline. It comes to me. So, I mean, there are times when I actually can initiate an assignment, but that's usually a story or a project. It's not so much an event or even a human interest story. So, and what I find sometimes is people will send me these great releases and I forward them on, but there's a few persons in particular that will call me like 3 times a day or email me like 3 or 4 times a day. And I get to the point where I just delete it because it's like I saw the information and I passed it on. So I guess maybe just overall in terms of PR, what I try to communicate to folks is like I try to do my best to go that extra step to get you plugged into the right people. But the more times that you send it to me, like unless I'm on the assignment desk, I really can't do anything with it unless it's a project that I've been giving time to work on. So I say that to say I will end up deleting it those multiple times that it gets sent, and then I don't know if that's the communication pattern you'll have with the other people I've sent you to, but they may or may not give it more weight because they're just getting an influx of the same request over and over. So I start off by just answering that etiquette from the being on the receiving end. You know, if someone told you about something 3 to 5 times a day, you heard enough of it, kind of.
Yeah, don't be a pest, basically.
Yeah,
is what she's saying. Don't be a pest.
Yeah, but in terms of the visual aspect of the opportunity that you'll provide to the paper or to the story or the subject, and I would just put those things up toward the front and leave, you know, keep your information, whether it's a release or a notice, keep it as succinct as possible, but provide the details that are going to be the obvious for the visual aspects of the story, especially if you're contacting the photo department. And even if you're contacting the Metro desk or, you know, the Pennsylvania desk or the Jersey desk, they too now are thinking visually more so than ever. So, you know, those kinds of details up front at top, where, you know, what specifically are you offering for us to cover, and how does that lend itself to some type of visual opportunity? Because while we're not the television station, we are looking at things in terms of their visual opportunity, and whether it be video or still photography.
Okay, so then they're not to be a pest.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would add to that I agree. I was immediately going to say that the visual aspect up front at the top of the press release, if there are human beings involved in the event, we did a lot of press releases for the event where the check is given, or the thing opens, or the thing gets unveiled. But the stuff, that thing, whatever it is, affects somebody. I think most of the time we want to know the people that it affects. And we might still send a writer to the event in which it's unveiled, but we also want to know in that press release probably maybe if a family was lined up that was the most affected by it, so that we know their names, if they and possibly even that they've been made aware that, hey, the newspaper might contact you. They are very interested in shooting video whenever they see an opportunity. We don't know if they will. We don't know if they'll call you. But would you be available if they do? And can we use your contact information? And they shoot video, they record audio, and they take photos. And they might bring all 3. They might bring only 1. But is it okay if they do it? Especially schools. You know, they don't. Schools haven't signed up until recently didn't have releases for web use, and they had people sign releases. The parents sign releases to let the kids be covered for that event, but nobody thought about, hey, the newspaper might want to put their pictures online, and having that kind of information, knowing that you can bring video, you can bring a recorder, you can bring a camera, helps our assignment editors, and definitely the human part of it at the top. And then the final part is sometimes if you think the features editor at the newspaper is the one that should get it, you should send it to them. But their email might be really full. So I would also say fax it. And I would also say the email to one other department editor, add that to your place, so that it's come 3 times, not 3 to the same person, but 3 to different people. And I think a lot of people send only 1 release out. They send it to the most important person. Unfortunately, the most important person is the person that everybody thinks is the most important person. And Tammy Polina, who's our features editor, gets about almost 1,000 emails a day in a strange way. She gets doubles of things. Maybe they're not totally 1,000, but they're 1,000 individuals. But she get easily 3, 4, 5, 600 emails.
Crazy.
It's hard to go through all this.
Thank you. I guess right now I want to open up to questions if you have any questions.
Brian, have you received pressure from any agencies in the United States and Iraq or the Middle East, one way or another, without identifying anyone? I mean, I'm assuming you're prevalent on the internet.
Yeah, but not who you think. Not anybody from the U.S. or from Iraq, actually. I could say that our bureau is located in Syria, but that's all I'll say. Publicly. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. But yeah, no, I mean, it's difficult because of the way that we work, and that a lot of Iraqi refugees go to Syria, and some of our staffers' families are there, and some of our people work from there, and it's interesting. I don't know, I mean, for people, if you've never traveled to an authoritarian state, like, it's a big difference. I was pretty shocked. I mean, like, I hadn't expected it to be as different as it was, and I was there, and last year, about a year ago. Right now, I would have been there in 2007. So, and then we had a little bit of trouble over the last year, but it's more individuals having trouble. We had a correspondent who was killed last year. The last journalist killed in 2007 actually was our staffer, and he was killed by an Iraqi National Guard patrol. It was unsanctioned, as far as we can tell. So, I don't know if it's still unclear if it was related to Alive in Baghdad or if it was related to. He was working on a story about one of the militias. It's a sort of special project, and he had contacts with that militia, which is how he was able to do the story. So it's unclear, was he killed by people from that militia because he was doing a story about it, or was he killed by another militia, because they knew he was related to the first militia? I don't know. But I was called by somebody at the Marine Corps Times on background because somebody in military intelligence said, "Oh yeah, Brian Conley from Alive in Baghdad is a good source for finding out about what's going on in Iraq and the Iraqi opinion." So, if anything, I think it would be nice if they might send us some funding without marketing it. I don't know. But yeah, no, nothing really. Sort of surprisingly.
Yeah, I think that's just in listening to how you guys are doing that. How you get money must be a challenge because you don't really to be funded. There's also it implies a certain slant. You know what I mean? If a big company wanted to come and say we'll fund you, how do you stay clear of that you are broadcasting without somebody kind of pulling any strings?
Yeah, I think we've done some of the way we've done funding is we've actually done projects for bigger companies. Like in 2007, we produced stuff for BBC Newsnight. We produced a documentary for them, and we licensed 5 episodes to Sky News. And we've done to a couple other smaller companies who are lesser known. But basically, our contracts are always we get a last look, and we need a good faith, that if we say something is out of line or is inaccurate or is misleading, that you're going to change it. And if you don't want to change it, that's fine, but you can't use Alive in Baghdad or Small World News. You can't say where it came from because that puts our people at risk. But yeah, I've also felt like if we were more adamantly anti-war or pro-war or pro-Iraq is doing great and everything is roses and candy, I think it would be on either end, we would be more likely to have funding and money. Yeah. And then in fact, because we're really just producing stories about life and it's so changeable, we're kind of like this unwanted stepchild.
Do you want to tell everyone the website again?
Yeah, it's aliveinbaghdad.org. And then we had a sort of another project that's kind of defunct due to finances mostly, aliveinmexico.org, which is a little bit different.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I have a question for Shawn and for Sara. And as videographers who work for newspapers, have you thought of looking for work in television? 1. And 2, how do you see the video journalism for a newspaper different from news stories that are on television?
The company Ganassi who owns us, they chose. I don't know what Inquier uses for their editing, but we use Avid editing, which is what I guess most broadcast news agencies use for editing. That wouldn't have been the software I wanted to use, but I guess the benefit of that was that they told us that although we're using a smaller pared-down version of Avid, it is essentially the exact same thing as what they use at the television station. So theoretically, I am fully certified to work at a television station. I haven't thought about it. I feel like it's a hard world to break into, I think at the newspaper level, if I'm shooting a video, we have multiple people who shoot videos on multiple levels of skill, from writers to photographers, and some of the videos look highly produced, and some of them don't. And not to say the ones that aren't effectively communicating a story. They most likely are. I try to make mine look as professional as possible. I think I get to spend a little bit more time, recording sounds, and we're only supposed to make videos 1 minute and 30 seconds long. I'm not sure how long you guys are allowed to do your videos. I pay attention to the numbers. Unfortunately, my job requires me to look really hard at how people view our website. Most people will not look at videos on our website more than 30 seconds. You really have to show them something to get them to go past the 30-second mark. And I struggle with the photographers who tend to want to make 4-minute videos. And I try to tell them, I said, that's great. You make your 4-minute video, just so you know. Anything past 1 minute and 30 seconds is all for you, and for your for you to feel good. But nobody's watching it past that. And most likely, some of them are not watching it past 30 seconds. So please get as much as your story out in 30 seconds to try to catch them. And I think we can do that a little bit with the television stations can't. But sounds and nuance and having to let the person let them breathe a second in the story, where I think television doesn't get to do that.
Television's probably even quicker.
Really quick. They're less than 30 seconds but I think Sundays on Fox, they let their photographers sometimes do these like enterprise stories, and on Sunday they get to stretch it out to 1 minute and 30 seconds, which is like probably a lifetime to them. And I saw some great videos from our broadcast people that trained us that was 1 minute and 30 seconds that I thought was days, not because it was slow, but just because hearing like there was an icebreaker video of the ice. He went out on a day with a boat with just breaking ice, and he hung the microphone off the side of the boat so it almost dragged along the ice as the boat broke through the Arctic ice, and it was great. And you couldn't do that on 6 at night on a weekday. You couldn't. They wouldn't spend that much time.
But that's, I feel like something that's not really talked about is that people don't read that much either. I mean, when you look at the news articles, how's a news article written? Like, write the most important stuff at the top, and then put some more general stuff, and then at the end you kind of like wrap it back together. I mean, that's sort of my understanding. I
can tell you a huge secret. There's a thing called first 5 graphs, and so you guys know. He's on the podcast, and I'll get in trouble.
It's going to be on the podcast, so.
Most times you will get the entire story of a story in the first 5 graphs, and then everything else after that. But if you read the first 5 graphs of almost any story in almost any newspaper, you will know the entire story in that time, because people do not read any farther than that. So you catch them with that, just like your press releases. You catch them at the top, because then they'll read further. So if you get them the full story in the first 5, then you can expand on the story after that and go another 18 inches, and the person will love the story. But the first 5 is what catches them.
Right, so I just think it's interesting that video is talked about this totally different way. Oh, nobody watches more than the first, 2 minutes max. I mean, it's right, you're right. Like, they don't. 30 seconds, and maybe 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes if you're lucky. But that's what everyone does with everything.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but the majority. And I don't think that, as a journalist, I'm not producing for the majority. I'm producing for people who are of interest and are looking for this content. And I try to make, with Alive in Baghdad, watch some of the episodes. A lot of the episodes, after the first 2 or 3 minutes, you could probably cut them. And you've learned a good part, but you're not gonna learn everything. Because that's for me. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna reward your persistence and give you a little bit more at the end. And also get into the story a little bit deeper. But also with us, we always put a whole block of text that describes adds all the other context that is not in the video. Like the video is just here's a video. I was speaking to somebody else, and they said, "Oh, well, how do you get the context in 3 minutes?" And it's well, you gotta look, and you gotta ask more, and you gotta be a discerning consumer. But I think that's the question again. It's when are we gonna stop saying that the dollar is the bottom line, or that the percentages are the bottom line? Yes, we gotta be able to pay the bills, we gotta be able to pay everybody. But maybe we have too many people, or maybe we have the wrong people, or maybe we, And I'm the first person to say, I don't think that well-paid union TV cameramen should be losing a job to somebody with a camera like Steve Lubetkin's. No offense, but I think there is training. There is a worth to that. But there's also a question of how do we prioritize money? What is the? I'm sure you're probably not at liberty to answer this sort of thing or talk about it out in reporting. But I would ask, what is the top person at Courier-Post or at Film Inquirer paid versus what are the people actually doing the on-the-ground reporting work? And that's these are all questions.
We're not going to cover that ground tonight. Yeah, we're not going there tonight.
Well, I don't know. I always think of it as an education. If you slowly get people to that 30-second mark with really good first 30-second stories, and you get them consistently coming back. I think the struggle we've had at the Courier, and I don't know about the Inquirer. You can talk next. Consistency of the video, not in terms of what it looks like, but in terms of always. If you're going to do a story about high school sports on Fridays, you have to continue to do it every single Friday after that. And if you do that 30 seconds first and then go up to minute 30, you can get people stuck on you, and you keep going, and then they sit with you for 4 minutes. A lot of our users come to us from their work.
Okay.
And they only have their lunch hour or 15 minutes to come to our website, so we kind of have to give them things a little bit what I would consider faster than maybe a site that they might go to from their home, where they have a little bit more
sure, but
down.
Still, our viewers are almost entirely 2.5 minutes. That's like the average.
But you can get them. I think you see once consistently giving them it in a time that they can digest, and then slowly building it, and maybe they don't realize that now they've been engrossed in something for multiple minutes.
I'm kind of curious to hear Sarah's answer if she thought about TV.
Oh, I haven't thought about it per se until when I was on the Obama trip. I had like a few people from the networks like looking over my shoulder like, you have really good video, and I'm like, really? It's just my style. But it like compared to some of the people that they have on the ground, I actually had a better camera than some of the producers that they had on the ground. I mean, they had a network cameraman, but then they also had producers shooting that was some of that CNN video or NBC News video that's like this. Their camera was like my camera was a better camera than they had, and I was shooting better video than they were. So I hadn't thought about it until actually this past month. I mean, it's not necessarily a goal of mine. My philosophy with my work is that it doesn't matter who I work for. It just matters what I do and like the effort that I put into my work. So I just really embrace video. It's like the next step for me. I can see myself doing documentary stuff because it kind of lends toward the type of subject matter that I take on just as part of my workload today at the Inquirer and the work that I've been doing over the last decade. So I think that might be more of a segue step. But I really love what I do, and the outlet that I have currently works well for me. But it just really did open my eyes though to the fact that as a still photographer and the work that I'm doing, what I guess not necessarily an opportunity, but what a perspective I bring to a television format or a documentary format that even a trained documentarian or a trained television journalist, I bring something totally different to the table. So I think there's like room for everyone. I mean, not necessarily that I'm interested in working for the television station or tomorrow going to do my first documentary film. But I think the work that I'm doing now to a degree is short documentary. I mean, some of the work that I've done, like on drunk driving, I did a piece on violence in the African American community last year. I mean, and I got emails from someone at USC that teaches violence that saw the video, and there's like, we should show this in our violence prevention seminar. And I never considered that someone would view it that way. But I tend to, I mean, for me, I think what I've noticed, especially in the photographers that are shooting the video, and on our staff, there are reporters shooting video, and there are producers shooting video. I mean, there's varying degrees of video being produced, like Sean was indicating at the Courier. So I'm basically talking more this evening about the photographers who are shooting the video, which, no disrespect to anyone else, but I kind of view it as a little bit like higher art, because I think that we, again, our perspective that we're bringing as visual journalists is already inherent when you come to composition and lighting and just the appreciation for the storytelling from a visual perspective. But that's not to say, like someone like Bob Moran or a few of the other reporters that have picked it up, that they can't do good work too. But with that being said, I guess what I'm getting around to say is even within the small group of us that have really embraced the video journalism, we each have our own style. I mean, I certainly, like, my videos have a style, and I think people who view my stuff, it's because I'm producing it, I'm shooting it. So it's like, it's a quicker pace, and I have humor in my videos, even though it's not necessarily like that I sought to make something funny. But like, for example, when I was with Obama and he was at Penn State at the Agricultural Center, there were these cows that were like like the traveling press, there was only so much room, but the cows were like trying to like gnaw at us and like with their lips and stuff, and it was hysterical. So I'm just sticking my camera in the cow's mouth and then making all these hilarious pictures, and so I wove it into the video. And it's like, I noticed most people were focusing just on Obama, what he was doing, but I was kind of trying to create another dimension to what was going on. So I started the piece with the cow's lips and his teeth out like this, and people are like, where are you going with this? But it happened, you know? So, you know, so, and I do tend to edit linearly, not even really thinking that there was a term rhetorically for that. But I think that's one of the things in moving forward with the newspaper, videographers in particular, or just anyone, I guess, per se. I don't feel like anyone's telling me how to do something, so I feel like I can bring my own style to it, and like how I shoot versus David Swanson versus Larry Kesterson versus the other photographers on the staff. It's like, I definitely have a different shooting style. I shoot with different angles, and like wide, I get close and I get further back, and some of my colleagues tend to be on the tripod most of the time, and some of my stuff isn't. So it's just, I think that's the exciting thing about video journalism, is that there's a place for just style to, you know, be who you are as a journalist and bring that to your work. But I think with the editing aspect of it, we get a lot of editing. So I think most of our stuff looks pretty good because you're getting a lot of feedback before you hit send or upload. So it's not like I'm just working by myself in a cocoon and then I'm like, I'm done and I'm ready to upload. I have multiple people view it and get their input and maybe change something or move something or cut something out. But we don't necessarily, we're not told it can't be more than this amount, but we generally stay around the 2-minute mark. But I've noticed for me personally, I've been going between a minute to a minute and 30 on my last 3 videos. And I didn't notice that till I actually looked at the counter like, oh, these are shorter than my other ones. But I think that if it's an effective piece and it has a good pace to it, regardless of the 30 seconds, your best stuff is in 30 seconds. I think the pacing is like one of the key things, because I've noticed some videographers or photographers at newspapers, they're really great shooters, but the pacing isn't really there. So I think that's one of the things that, you know, not just with editing, but how you're pacing your shots and how you're pacing, you know, the audio, the sound, you're talking about sound, like that's just a whole new thing, you know, to be listening now when I'm out somewhere shooting versus just paying attention to the visual as a still journalist. So it's just so many things that we could be discussing. I just guess I could go everywhere with it. Yeah, it is.
Very cool. I think we have time for one more question. Ken?
My question for Sara. I'm kind of an old school guy. I used to work at the Inquirer myself. And the really great still photographers were able to get shots basically by stalking the subject matter. And they would spend a lot of time stalking them. I don't see how you or Shawn, for that matter, or anybody in the business today can take that, can enjoy that luxury. I mean, you're too busy multitasking to get the really super still shot. So how do I put this in the form of a question? Where do your priorities lie in terms of, you know, you've got a video camera, you've got a still camera?
That's a good question. And for me in a news situation, unless it's a sterile situation, I would not personally be shooting both. For example, the various press conferences that we've seen over the past 2 weeks with Nutter and Ramsey about the various issues as it relates to police violence and or the passing of the police officer recently, actually was assigned to shoot the conference as it relates to Sergeant Lubetkin. And so because I was in a sterile environment where I had the video camera on a tripod, I took my still camera and shot with the 7200 telephoto, and it worked out fine. But basically I was asked to shoot video and do a frame grab, but I still feel like the still photograph is like higher art to me. And if I can shoot a still image, I'd prefer to shoot the still and do the video, even though it's like juggling a lot of work. But outside of that environment where, you know, it's a very still, sterile environment, you do have to make a choice. And because of that, we're now staffing a lot of our events with video and still. And I think in general, and when you talk about the time element for any story and what we choose to cover and not cover, you know, we have to make a decision. We certainly can't do everything because we have less staff than we had a year ago. And, you know, we just can't do it. I'm thinking of John Costello, who shot the video of the gentleman that was taken from Miami back to Philadelphia. This was last year with the other officer shooting. Unfortunately, I'm having to bring these unfortunate stories up, but just an example of he was brought back. It was either early evening or like 8 or 9 at night, and so John was stationed at the Philadelphia airport with video. He shot a few stills, but he just basically put the camera on the tripod and hit record. And he did a piece where he did a voiceover describing the whole situation, and he put 2 stills in there with some motion, but basically it was the video of the guy coming off the plane. So again, if the environment isn't sterile, you really do have to make that decision, because the work that I did on Obama, working 20 hours a day, we can't do that every day. We just don't have the luxury of giving all of our staff comp time or overtime, and then you just wouldn't be able to function. So we have to make these editorial choices. But there are many times when we send out a videographer and a still photographer if we have the resources to do that. And our traffic tends to be daytime. It tends to be like 6 a.m. to like 6 p.m. So, if we can send someone out at that time of day and they can roll over the footage right away. And we are shooting stuff and getting it posted within an hour sometimes. We'll make that push or give that dedication to resources. But if it's in the evening, people won't necessarily view it till the next day. The majority of the traffic anyway, they may or may not decide to do it.
Well, these are all been great answers, and you guys have been all wonderful panelists. So I'm going to wrap it up now because we started around over time, but it was fun. And thank you for your good questions, and thanks for coming out. Our panelists will be here for a little bit longer if you wanted to ask them some questions. But thanks again for coming out. So thanks. Bravo, guys. You guys are great. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the PRSA Philadelphia chapter. If you have comments or suggestions about this program, you can email steve@professionalpodcasts.com or call 1-856-751-5491. If you'd like more information about the programs of the Philadelphia chapter of the Public Relations Society of America, or if you'd like information on joining the chapter, please visit our website at www.prsa.philly.org. We produce this program in the studios of Professional Podcasts in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. For PRSA Philadelphia, this is Steve Lubetkin. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you out there on the net. Take good care.